loud? Better?
Hello. You've done that before.
So we're a little past time. Does anyone want to ask a question to get the discussion started? Any question about software testing? Could be sociological, could be technical.
Anything you like. We also have two ghost panelists here to my left.
How do you balance test coverage when you're a startup and you have limited resources and tight deadlines? And how do you do quality assurance when you have those constraints?
So I think quality assurance always works under those constraints, even in very large companies. And to some extent, you know, the large test plan idea protects that testing time, but I've never worked in a situation in any testing context where I had as much time as I would like. So it was always pretty relentless in terms of prioritization and trying to decide how much time do I spend on this area at the expense of others. And I think this is something that testers are actually doing quite a lot without really deep reflection on why they're doing things. You know, moment to moment, you're making decisions about what to test and the time you have left to release. You know, perhaps you find a problem and then you have to document that bug and then you have to reproduce it, and then you've lost an hour of time that you could have to have increased your coverage. So I guess what I have my teams doing is we use session-based test management, where they have their testing assigned in chunks that are down to about an hour or 90 minutes, and a description of what they would test in that time is very fuzzy. And then they take these descriptions of test charters and put them together as a way to describe all of the testing that they would like to do, and then they prioritize those. And the idea would be, even if this is a super interesting area, and I've spent 90 minutes on it, I have all of these other test charters, I've got to get to them. And you know that they'll still get some coverage, but I think even thinking about it puts you ahead of some other testers.
Maybe just to add to that, so in the startups that I've been consulting at, what I've observed is one pattern where the team usually focuses on the technical aspects of testing, so getting some unit coverage and all that, and I will not forget the user view on the product itself, so someone should interact with the product you're building and try to find whether or not it satisfies what you're trying to achieve. Can you take the microphone, because the audience probably can't hear you.
Oh, now we'll start. 1 second. You'll be ready to ask a question for next. Oh wait, you just asked a question.
Okay, good day everyone. So sorry for being a little bit late. Now we are starting our panel discussion, and our panelists today are Eric Regler, Hillary Henry Gerter, and Alexander Chicago. So if you have questions, you can ask these questions a little bit later, but now we'll go with, let's say, predefined questions, and I will start asking questions to our panelists, and they'll answer to these questions. And today's topic is software testing in modern tech. Okay. So today's topic is software testing in modern tech, and first question to you is, what's your vision about software testing in modern tech? So you can start answering.
Okay, so I guess my response to software testing in modern tech is when I look at the aspects of modern tech that have changed how I examine how software works, I think about observability. So if you're not familiar with this, this is a pretty new idea that came from the monitoring world. Most of our production monitoring these days comes from, these days is, most of the production monitoring we used to do was based on being able to debug. So if there was an error, log enough interesting information that I can figure out what the hell happened. Now, the suggestion is that since this space has become cheap, we log the interesting information about the transaction so that we can actually understand what the user did. So as opposed to only log when something goes wrong, it's log everything and let me understand what happened. So this has implications in the field of user research, in terms of understanding what your users actually do. And this gives you a chance to look at test data shaping by seeing what kinds of data gets accessed and at what time by what kinds of users. So this idea, this is a big change from just a few years ago, when there was very little information about the production context. And I think people that are testing today should be thinking about testing a deployed system. How does this actually run in these containers on this public cloud with tools like observability, with tools like application performance management, your New Relics, your Dynatraces, tools like that, so that you understand how it runs in production very well, as opposed to the older approach of only seeing how it works in the test lab and then it gets sent out to the world like some university graduate to do the best it can.
So I think this change also has some implications on the skill requirements for someone who is in testing in that world. So I believe that in the future, testers should have a very sound foundation in engineering and be able to have meaningful interactions with developers. They don't need to be the best developers in writing production code, but they certainly need to understand what's going on a technical level. Now this, of course, needs to be combined with a strong testing mindset, which is challenging the system. And I think that in combination, currently I perceive as being quite rare. So I believe that someone who studies software engineering and then decides to go in the field of testing will have a bright future.
Okay, I will take it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, actually, about this point, what I feel, on the one hand, we became better from automation perspective, and we have a lot of very good approaches, and it's very good. Now we can do a lot very fast, and it's really very nice. But we have another dark side of this approach, because on the one hand we are very fast, on the other hand we get a lot of some kind of logs. We can deploy a lot, but sometimes we don't understand what to do with this stuff. And I think I found one interesting point when I was researching logs from one of the biggest cloud hoster. It is SouthLab, about our deployment approach, and I think it was 3 years ago. We had we found very good solutions for some deployment approaches, and it was possible to do deployment very fast. And it was guys, what do you think? How many deployments we need, for example, for 1 day or for 1 hour? And it was possible to deploy just, I think, 3 times per hour or even more. And then we've got some problems because of that, because not always to doing something too fast, not always it means that it is good. And now, because of trends of DevOpsing solutions and so on, we can do everything very fast, but we can't really, sometimes we really can't manage it. And what I feel for QA guys, that we really have to control this process from requirements to cooperation with development guys, with DevOpsing guys. And I think it is some kind of the biggest challenge that we have right now, and we have to work on it. And really, I think it's something like really quality assurance and not quality control, because everything is very fast, and if you want to survive in this world, you should be really like real quality engineer. And I think it's not just like understanding of some technical aspects. It's something like when you can control this process, and I think it's the most important. And it's really quality assurance that we can find in all the books, but unfortunately sometimes we talk about quality assurance, but really we are doing quality control. And in our modern life, I think we really we will not be able to do quality control because of world is too fast for us. And if you want to survive in this world, real quality assurance, it's our way. It's my opinion.
Okay, thank
Oh,
you.
wait,
And, I'm
no,
sorry,
no,
we'll
no,
come
no,
to quality assurance, quality control, and software testing.
No, this is not. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about one more quick comment.
Yeah.
What Ilari said about software development, and having some skills with reading code, I would also add operation skills. And when I heard about pipelines, having the ability to examine them and understand what actually happens, in addition to just this, learning how to automate, sure, that's somewhat helpful, but understanding more about the software as it lies.
Okay, yeah. Now another question about software testing. So what's the difference from now to 5 years before, and what's your vision about software testing after 5 years? So what will happen in 5 years?
So I think anyone who claims to know what's going to happen in 5 years, just deceives him or herself. I think
maybe your vision about it.
The vision is probably that's going to be a more integrated function. And so maybe if I just have a comment on quality assurance and quality control. So these are concepts that comes from manufacturing. So these were, again, analogies taken from a previous world. And they also imply that there's someone who's in charge of the quality, and the team who builds it, they don't have to care about that because there's some function after that taking control of that. I find tester a very honorable title for what we are doing here. So quality assurance is not what we're doing. We're not assuring quality because that's not possible in a complex world of software. So maybe we should just let go these concepts of quality assurance and quality control. They belong in the manufacturing age and not in software engineering.
I hope that maybe if you're talking about something that will be in 5 years, for example, I want to believe that we will find some real solutions, for example, how to test IoT, how to test artificial intelligence, how to deal with big data, and so on. I hope that it will be really. Because right now, from my side, I think we do not have some real rational solutions for testing all this, but we are trying, we work a lot on it, and it's like very important, and I'm sure we should concentrate on this direction.
I'm going to go to some very technical solutions I think I'm hoping to see in testing. We're already seeing people running Selenium tests at scale, where they run hundreds or thousands of instances. In a modern web application, front-end performance is something like 80% of the response time for the user. So I think this is pretty important. When I'm hearing from my colleagues in the US who work at the larger web-based company that this is where they're headed, is Selenium at scale, so that their functional tests are also meaningful performance tests. I'd like to see better engagement with network and device emulation. I think that a lot of people test at their laptop or desktop in an office, and it's not the experience that their users generally have. There are tools to help you do that, but it's somewhat complicated and cumbersome. I think it would be much easier if there was a solution. I don't have startup capital, I just have startup ideas. Anyone who wants to come up with a desktop app that permits you to change your client to work under different conditions so that you can do testing that more accurately reflects your user would be interesting.
One question. What you mentioned about UI test, and what do you think? What is the future of UI tests? I don't care about maybe for Selenium, for web, for and so on. How it will be in future? Will we keep the same direction, or we will try to decrease quantity of UI tests and so on? What do you think?
Well, what I'm recommending these days is to do the minimum number of UI tests necessary, to focus more attention on integration and unit testing. So I mean, the pyramid is way overused, but there's some value there. I think UI tests are the most expensive to maintain and the hardest to write to make them reliable. So in the future, I imagine there'd be some ways to make that easier. I mean, just solving the identifier problem in some meaningful way would improve so many people's lives. Maybe the capacity to immediately run again when you fail. I mean, people are building in a lot of these kinds of things manually. So I think there's still a big lift required to be an effective UI engineer, even with scriptless tools, which are bullshit anyway.
Thank you.
So you talked about the skills and the features. So what are the required skills for software testers now?
Well, I think a healthy sense of humor is number one. Well, no, that's just one thing that is very helpful to have. But it's certainly a mixture between technical and sociological, psychological categories that in combination will be helpful. So what I believe in, a very good test is someone whose mind is restless and is occupying itself with a lot of different things. So if someone is just, farming chicken and building Lego bricks and I don't know, something like that, I think these are all inputs that could be valuable for testers. Certainly one of the most important skills of a tester is being a critical thinker and also come up with very good ideas and many ideas. Be a good lateral thinker. I think these are maybe the major ones.
Actually, I'm sure that we need really a lot of different qualities to for having really good QA engineer. But I think the most important is, and I'm sure it will be, it is understanding of really approaches for quality assurance, and it's the most important to understand why you really test it, for what, and so on. And of course, a lot of different and other skills like programming, some technical skills, some DevOpsing skills, some thinking skills, I don't know how to call it. And it is also very important, and of course it depends on each particular case, what we have, depends on some domains area and so on and so on. But I think the most important really it's like the beginning, it's understanding of the best practice really in manual testing. Just you can not to test it manually, but you should understand why you test it, for what, and how it will be used in future. I think it's very important from my side.
I'm training my testers right now to answer the question, what problem is the software solving? I really want them to engage with the business context and to be able to understand their users of the software. So we're introducing tools like personas to get people thinking about what's the value that the customer expects to get from the software. So I'm skipping over some of the things that have already been mentioned, but to add that, testers who can understand what the big picture and the small picture and switch back and forth between them seems to me to be like the tester superpower. Like, I can look across all of the software and think about coverage, and then I can jump on this one little tiny bit and come up with more ideas than I can execute about how I might test that one small piece. And I can jump back up and see, has the situation changed? What do I need to test? I think that goes back to Larry's point about intellectual flexibility. You have to be able to change context and faster than anybody else, and be able to assume a new perspective. And that takes a lot of intellectual flexibility to be able to do that rapidly, frequently, and well.
Maybe just one more to add to that is the ability to feel very comfortable with uncertainty. I think that's an element that's super important. and also understand that uncertainty can't be just get rid of by over formalizing a process.
Okay, thank you. So you talked about manual testing and automation testing. So is there any manual testing and automation testing? What you think about this separating of testing and so?
So other people have done the work of separating the concepts of testing and checking. The way that I describe that usually is that a check is an automated is what we call an automated test, because I can generally only repeat an observation I've previously made. By the time I've written an automated test, I've done the most interesting things in terms of test coverage, just figuring out what I'm going to test, and then repeating that check in an automated fashion is pretty valuable as a change detector. I don't like calling that testing, because I like testing to be learning new things, to be somewhere I haven't been yet. A lot of testers start with acceptance criteria, and that's fine, but I want to see what you do with the other 95% of your testing. And repeating the same paths over and over again doesn't yield new information, doesn't increase test coverage, and breeds check-resistant bugs that hide in the spots where nobody will look.
So in general, I reject the notion of the classification between manual and automated testing. I don't think it makes a lot of sense. So to me, it's the degree of human interaction that's important. So if you still want to have two categories, there is the algorithmic world that consists of checking a product, and then there's the heuristic interaction world, where you conduct experiments to yield more information about how a product reacts to your actions. And these two together, they combine into testing. And it's also these are not clear categories that are kind of binary. So it's a certain level of degree as well, because you can do exploratory testing using scripts. So automation is not just an entity that's on the side and manual testing is on the other side. I think it's just the degree of human interaction and the application of tool use.
Just before I start, one question. What do you think, for example, in 10 years, will it be actual vacancy for QA manual? If we're talking about QA manual, will it be actual, for example, in 10 years? Just what do you think? I think it's a question to both of you, because I have my opinion, but it's interesting also. What do you think? Because of course, I'm sure we all want to see QA like QA engineer who understand everything, who have general picture of project and so on. But if you're talking just about QA manual guy, who can, for example, create test cases, to execute something, to create issues and so on. Just
okay.
What will be in 10 years, for example?
So if the notion of a manual tester is one of a human bot who just executes instructions and doesn't use his or her brain, I think that's a concept that has never worked and will certainly not be there. What happens in 10 years? I don't know, maybe we're all dead in 10 years. It's just too long a time to think about. But just the notion of a manual tester who emulates to be a machine is a stupid concept and has always been a stupid concept. So again, kind of following instructions, step 1, step 2, step 3, as a manual test case is a stupid concept. It has never been good and it has never worked.
I would say that there will always be a need for people to examine the software and see what it is that we actually built. Testing that hinges on what the requirements were before we started and what we thought we were going to build always has a big mismatch with the completed product. So being able to assess what was actually built, understand it, evaluate its fitness for purpose, evaluate whether it's something that represents the company's branding in a way that they would be comfortable with. There's always going to be some role for that. But if you're, as Lars said, if your manual tester is filling out spreadsheets with checkboxes, maybe it's lost, maybe it isn't. No great loss if it is to me.
Actually, I don't like this distribution like we have manual team, automation team, I don't know, another non-functional automation team and so on and so on. And I don't like it, but and I hope that in future it will be possible to combine all these skills in one guy. but
or lady.
yeah. But right now, I think because of due to some reasons, we can't do it really. We still have some QA just who does some manual verification, and that's it. But I hope in future we will at least decrease quantity of guys who just doing manual testing,
Or ladies.
and we will keep somebody, and I hope it will the ladies, and that's all.
Okay, so we talked about quality assurance term, about software testing. So we all know that quality assurance term came from manufacturing industry, and now it's very popular in software development industry. So for selling software tester to juniors, to young people, what steps we need to do to sell this software testing term instead of quality assurance? Or maybe we need to keep quality assurance and forget about software testing. So what's your vision about this?
So I'll take well, the bit I'll say about quality assurance is it refers to a control function that is of some value to the business, where it be understanding that I'm not going to put out a defective product that hurts my customers. It may be an obsolete term, but it certainly is a need. I am still super disappointed to see the industrial terms like Six Sigma in software. Psh. But okay, to sell to a young person, I would tell them that testing is just really freaking fun. That they get a chance to use your mind in ways that are not the same time from time again, and lets you find new things, and lets you you can learn about how to code, you can learn about operations, you can learn about development, and all these things are happening at once, and it makes you a technology generalist in a way that you have a lot of flexibility with your future move. So I can think of times where I've been to like a university job fair, and somebody shows up and they say, "I want to be a network administrator," and I'm thinking, no, you don't. That job sucks. I mean, maybe you really enjoy, configuring routers all day, but most people don't. I think it's a bit of a sad thing that so many good people move through testing on their way to something else. I also think it's wonderful because we have a chance to give them something, and there's so much they can get in return during that time, learning how technology works end to end, to be less chained to a specific function in this whole software business.
Also, the industry needs to make the job more attractive. So I've been working for eBay, and in the US, usually the interviews work like this. So a hopeful person came to an interview for a back-end developer job, failed there, and then was handed over to the front-end developer interview. If they failed again, they were handed over to QA, so they call it QA as well. And then, because they needed people, they just took everyone. So what you have there is someone who's not really good at his or her job, doing what they really don't like. And I don't think this is a good path to go. If the job becomes attractive to people, then there are a couple of other changes that we need to implement. So currently there are very few tertiary education level opportunities in testing. So there's one in Switzerland that we just started, and I think universities should consider to at least have some postgraduate specialization courses in testing that don't only handle the technical aspects but also include everything else.
Actually, a good point about some kind of approach for QA area, QA direction in some university and so on, and I hope it will be, but unfortunately I don't know how it works right now. Yeah, if somebody knows, to tell me about it. It could be interesting information. Actually, about testing, I think it's one of the best choice for guys who
And ladies.
Of course, yeah, for guys and ladies, yeah, who really wants to work in IT, for example, but unfortunately due to some reasons can't choose something like development, I don't know, BA, management, and so on, and really QA, it's like the best start point for being flexible in future, and it's really very cool, and I'm sure that we will keep the same direction in future, and it's very nice. I don't know even know what to add for that.
So, Aram, shall we open the questions to the audience as well? There's only 15 minutes left.
Yeah, only one last question from my side, and then audience can ask some questions. So my question is, who is in charge for quality?
In my context, the person in charge for quality is the person who ultimately has the responsibility to make a release or not release decision. The team who builds the software, everyone involved, product, testing, engineering, PMO, they're all responsible for the quality of the software, but the only person who can assure the quality is someone who actually has, controls the lock on the gate. So in my role in testing, I try to advise the team who either may agree or decide not to release the software on what I think they should do based on what I know about testing, but I may be overruled. And I have the opportunity to escalate that, but it's likely that if I think we shouldn't release and the rest of the team thinks we should, I probably know how that will turn out.
I'm still thinking.
Okay.
This is my view of things as well, so nothing more to add.
Okay, thank you. So now audience has some questions. So you are free to take a mic and ask questions. Arsen.
Thanks. Oh look, he already had a mic too.
I was correct. Thanks for the interesting discussion. My question goes to Hillary mainly, but other panelists, obviously, I'd like to hear their opinions as well. This is the second time already during this couple of days you're mentioning about university-grade software testing courses, and you just mentioned that those courses need to include everything else apart from the technical aspect. Would you please elaborate on that? Like, how do you see the curriculum on a very high level?
Right. I mean, on a very high level, it consists of modeling, test design, critical thinking, also a skillful writing of reports, how to communicate to people, social aspects in terms of telling people that their baby is ugly. So that's what testers often do. When you find an error and tell something is not very good, that's a message that needs some care to transport to people. And I think so. All these things need to be involved in a curriculum.
What test you will have, like after that? What do you think? How to deal? Just we are talking about some kind of education, and then how we can check that it works.
I'm not sure if I'm
just for example, if you learn somebody for like QA, and then you just if we are talking about job, it's like some kind of interview in university. It could be some test, and what could be in this test? What do you think?
So the way we do it in Switzerland is that there are a couple of tests that happen during the course. So there's one semester of course that has also exams in it, and then the second semester of the course is actually where they have to work on a specific project, and they have to go through all the things that they have learned during the course, and that will result in a written deposition of both their work and also presentation on the stage where they talk about what they have been doing.
When is better to involve, like to provide some kind of automation for this in the beginning, or it could be later? Key automation, I mean.
Well,
some programming language and so on.
I can't answer that question unless you give me a specific context. I can't generalize.
For example, we are trying to. We need some kind of. We have some program for QA guys, and
ladies.
And ladies, of course, yeah. And
so people would be a good word.
Yeah. What do you think? When we should when they should learn some programming languages and so on, or it's not needed at all?
No. So these people, they have a degree already, and the requirement to go through that postgraduate course is that you have a technical degree in some engineering discipline and that you are able to program.
Good.
All I'd really add to that list is epistemology, the philosophical study of knowledge, and logic. Why do you think you know the things that you know?
Thank you very much.
Yes, so there's a very good book by Paul Feyerabend. It's called Against Method, and it teaches epistemological anarchy. So, and that's, I think, a good mental model to have.
Sorry, question from my side. It's a couple of, I have two parts. So first, how to make the QA position more prestige. Even now you mentioned that it could be a good starting point for someone who for some reasons can't be an engineer, and also from salary perspective it's also not so prestigious software engineering. So actually how to make that profession to really be valued, because actually it's the essential part of any development lifecycle, and we just can't make anything without the QA position. So first part is that, and the second, how to break that part of, well, I'm starting with manual testing, and then my dream is to become full automation engineer, and to break that actually every QA engineer should do both manual and automation. Thank you.
Don't care about prestige, just work and everything will be.
One of the things that's been successful in some companies is to pay testers the same as engineers. I'm proud that the company I work for does that. Another aspect to this is to, we work in agile teams, and we make sure the testers also, we keep on making sure that they're not to be treated as some lower class. They have to be included in all the same meetings. They estimate stories the same as engineers do. And it's something I watch very closely for the social dynamics. It's especially concerning sometimes because testing is a more diverse field than some other fields in technology, particularly from a gender perspective. So I always have to watch this very closely, that what's happening when a tester is being treated as a lower class citizen. Is this because they're a tester, or is this because some man doesn't like a woman criticizing their work? So making testing more prestigious, I think emphasizing how much, how it's enjoyable, emphasizing that automators spend all of their time debugging code and very little time getting to actually think about cool stuff. I think that's probably what I go with.
There is an additional thing that we as a community can do. It's kind of, we should probably practice our skills a little bit more and not allow any dogmatic influence just guide our work, so that we become paper shufflers. We should do that.
Yeah, that's to me is a definition of a soulless job, is to take a piece of paper from over here, to look at it, come up with something to do to it to prove that I've added value, and then send the paper to the next place.
So a good heuristic there is, if you create a document that starts with how to read this document, then you're on the wrong path.
Thank you. We have another answer from Arthur from organizing team.
Thanks for the question. Regarding the prestige of the QA team, mainly I can say that it's coming from the maturity of the company itself, how the upper management seeing of the process and the role of the software tester within the company. And if we can monitoring the companies, at least in Armenia, and also the companies that we are working with, cooperating, it's the maturity of the company and how they are seeing the processes. So in a lot of companies which are we are working with, there are any kind of the difference even between the salaries, and especially regarding the prestige of the position. I have my subjective point of view regarding how software testing is differ within all other positions of the development team. But in any case, I think that it's all depends from the team and how the company itself seeing its testing team. So that saying that it is less prestige or it is less salaries in software testing, it's not true for all the companies. It's the first one. And the another one that I fully agree with Hilary, so it's the thing that we are fighting against about the few years very actively in Armenia, and one of our goals to make the profession more famous, and also prepare some areas when we can get the new candidates, and also give the community and give the professionals possibility to grow as a specialist and become not even the technically the weakest part in the chain of the team of the development and know that the people are giving the value to their teams. So it is just my point of view on seems the situation that we have in Armenia and not only. So then thank you for the question.
One last little nugget. The person who knows how will always be directed by the person who knows why.
There's one more point regarding to prestige. Actually, I'm sure that QA area is some kind of integrated part of any development process, and it's very important, like development, like everything. But unfortunately, now really, I heard a lot of questions like we have some problems with prestige and salary is low and so on and so on. I'm sure most of these problems are due to, unfortunately, not each QA guy can really explain.
Or lady.
Ladies, of course, yeah. Not each lady can really explain why QA is important, what QA guys are doing, and so on. People, ladies, yeah, and sometimes we have some lack of transparency of this process. It's like you can do development. Why we have to do testing? And unfortunately, for most cases, it is problem of each QA guy who can't explain, or lady, of course, why we should do testing. Sorry, if you can't explain why you want to test it, it's your problem. Just like an example, and unfortunately, I saw a lot of such questions. It's like, I have low salary, why are you doing testing? Oh, my testing?
Yeah, just
Who, me?
apart from some gender challenges in your statement, I think I agree that being able to talk about what you're doing is an important skill as a tester.
Yeah, I think that's something that testers need to look inward at, is where the most important thing we can do is explain what we're doing, why we're doing, and what the value in that is.
Yeah, because for most cases it's like, I will create bugs. You're welcome, okay, it's a very smart job, yeah.
No, you reveal bugs, the bugs already were there.
I will close bugs, guys and ladies, yeah.
No, we don't close.
And I will not close bugs, yeah, it's the best.
We don't close bugs, we're not fixing them.
Sorry, so as we have our very limited time, and we'll ask for last question from auditorium, and turn it on, please. No. Do we have another?
Okay, now it works. Thanks. Sorry. So my question is, you're testing a new feature. Everything works as expected, and then according to the document as described in it. But at some point, you realize it contradicts the overall product logic, and it shouldn't work. I don't know, against what the product vision is. What do you do in those cases? Is it expected from a tester to report those things, and how it works?
Absolutely. I was first. So you brought up a very, very important aspect of your work. It's not just the compliance to some document that you're checking on. It's kind of what you did is the most beautiful thing. It's you applied your common sense, and that is a very powerful tool. And of course, you should report these things. If it doesn't make sense, then you should argue from the user's perspective that they wouldn't be delighted what you're observing there. So the requirements document is not the only reference by which you can identify problems in the product. You have a whole set of something that we call oracles. And these are any sort of references that you can make use of to detect if there is a problem in the product. Coming back to what you said very initially, kind of it works as expected. This is just one snapshot from that. So there's a Dijkstra in the 70s already defined that with testing you can only demonstrate the existence of bugs but never the absence. So a proof that a product has no bugs is fundamentally not possible. So you cannot do that. But in your case, the way I would argue is from a user's point of view, what they would feel if they saw what doesn't make sense here.
For every explicit requirement, there are X number, dozens, hundreds, thousands of tacit requirements that any user of the software would bring to the table. And that's maybe the fundamental question about how test automation can't replace people examining software and understanding how it works and how it makes them feel to use it. People pay money because they like using software, because the software solves a problem for them. They don't pay money because you delivered what you said you were going to do.
I have nothing to it. Absolutely agree with you guys.
Correct use of guys.
As far as you know.
Okay, thank you very much, dear panelists. Thank you, dear attendees, for coming to our panel discussion. So we'll meet in 10 minutes here and on other two sessions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.